To call to order the facilities committee meeting, noting that all members of school board on the committee are here except for Joan, and Judy is filling in for her, and members of our staff administration and Vogel team is here. We need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. And there aren't any public comments I'm aware of. And we'll just move right into update on the schedule and finances by Steve for Heritage Elementary School.
You, Katie. So the first agenda item, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind opening the attachment, please. So we continue to attend construction meetings out at the new Heritage Elementary School site. One of the things that we do at each of the meetings is review the schedule. At the last meeting, we were starting to really get into some conversations about move-ins to the school and when the furniture is going to arrive and the movers that the board approved last month. So we're really starting to kind of dial into the late July, early August timeframe. The school itself remains on schedule. So the information that we hear at the construction meetings about the schedule is very positive. Vogel is targeting July 31st for a substantial completion date. And we are then targeting August 1st to have the movers arrive at the site to begin moving in teacher supplies. So all of that is really going according to schedule right now. What you see on the screen is we also review at every one of these meetings what we call our contingency tracker. So what that means is we have a contingency for the project that we created back in the fall once Jay was here with the guaranteed maximum price. Again, the far right column is called owner's contingency. That means that as a board, when you approve the guaranteed maximum price, the meeting Jay was here, he showed a variety of value engineering options. We received board feedback on that, and then Randy made the decision to move ahead accordingly. That's the far right column. There's still 303,000 remaining in that value engineering owner's contingency. Most of the changes that are occurring to date are being viewed as owner changes that we're requesting as we kind of go through the process. So we're lining them up with really the owner contingency. And then the middle column, the 2.6 million, references the construction contingency that was identified from the very beginning. You could see the total up at the top, and it's a balance of 2.6 million. Overall, between the two of them, the contingency is in amazing shape at this point of the project. We couldn't be more pleased with where it is at and how few change orders has taken place so far during the project. As a reminder, if there were any change orders over 50,000, we needed to bring them through this committee. There hasn't been. And so that's why there's been no action items on this agenda for approval. They've all been under Randy's threshold. So they all go to Randy for review and consideration. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, but that's a brief update on the finances and the schedule of the new Heritage.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions?
What is the CB? You get that CB14 and CB16. What is that?
Oh, it's a good question. So CB means construction bulletin. It's when Vogel is working with EUA for, I'll call it clarification of the scope. When there's questions about a particular design, and one thing we can do, Jack, is ask for a better description of that. So because obviously that doesn't mean anything to you. To explain what that actually is, but basically it's Vogel clarifying with EUA the design intent behind a particular, item that was a part of the bid specs. Jay, anything to add?
Yeah, so like CB16, what we'll get is likely 2 or 3 pages of a summary of what's changed and then a bunch of new drawing sheets. So it could be 5 or 6 or 7 different scopes that just clarify questions we had throughout the process of that project. But like Steve said, if you wanted more detail, there's a lot more detail than what appears on that
Before we approve them, those are all things we talked about at the job trailer site, and we need with them. If there's any further dialogue, then Steve and I talked to Rich of the trailer, and he kind of walks us through them. So, but yeah, all of those have made sense. They've all been things that are to the benefit of the project.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, Steve. Moving on to information regarding the demolition and earthwork bids at the middle school.
Sure, just to introduce this and then I'll turn it over to the Vogel team. So last month, we really began the process of bringing information to the facility committee regarding the process for the construction of the new middle school. So what you had in front of you last month was the abatement bids. Jay mentioned when he was here last month that he would be back the following month to start asking for consideration for demolition and earthwork. So the bid tabs have been included. I'm going to turn it over to Jay and ask him to do some introductions first to make sure everybody's aware of who's on the Vogel team, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect. So I have two people with me today. Adriana actually was at the last facility, but since we have a new face, so I'd like Adam to introduce himself.
Morning, everyone. Adam Green.
So Adam's gonna be leading the middle school project for us. I'm obviously still involved similarly with Heritage, but Adam will be leading that on site, and then Adriana. So,
Yeah, Adriana Martin, so we're looking on the high school.
so I'm gonna have Adam go through the bid tabs for the middle school.
Yeah, we might start with the demolition one. So, yeah, Jay mentioned, this is the demolition bid tab. We got a lot of responses from the market. Quick little history on how we put this together. We had the abatement contractors provide an alternate for demolition. And we also had earthwork contractors provide an alternate for demolition to see which economies of scale provided the best kind of cost results for the district. And then you also see we have demolition and stockpile listed. So we had alternates from the bidders again to salvage all the concrete and block as part of the existing building to be crushed by the earthwork contractors. We could use that stone throughout the new construction. That resulted in between $90,000 to $100,000 of savings for having to take that concrete off site and bring in new stone. So that's just part of the base kind of bid comparison here. Robinson Brothers, who was awarded for abatement, was the low bidders, the economies of scale with abatement. Was the best direction there, and it was below the budget that we've been carrying by a significant amount. One other note is that that scope would go with the abatement scope that's being contracted directly to the district that Vogel Brothers would help manage on site. And then I guess one other note, as my coworker Rich would say, if Robinson Brothers is doing abatement and demo, once they show up on site, you'll know that building's going away.
Rich has a lot of one-liners.
Very nice.
I told Adam he has to throw.
Yeah, that was good.
There's a lot of ones that aren't appropriate. Earthwork. So again, we got a lot of responses from the market. The low bidder was Parisi, who I know has some presence in the district. But we had a scoping meeting with them. We feel comfortable they have the entire scope included. Again, we've got crushing salvaged concrete stockpile as part of the base numbers here. And their bid ended up also being below the budget we're carrying, so we're happy to see that.
And if I could just add the format that, again, it's been a few months since we've seen the format from the Heritage bids. To the far right, you see a column that indicates during the budgeting process that Jay manages and what value was assigned to this work. The far right would show a difference between where the bidding process took place and what the final one. So this one is a savings from what you're seeing here. Obviously, it doesn't always work out that way, but that's the preference, is to budget conservatively and then see positive results from the market. But this is the format that we've used with Heritage. We did have feedback from the facility committee that preferred this type of format with these to come forward. So you can see the names of the firms across the top. You can see the budgeted amount, and then you can see the whole picture as a frame of reference. And one of the things that as a district, we feel good about, with partnering with a firm like Vogel is the work that they were doing to try to figure out between abatement, demolition, and earthwork, where could the district save the most money? And so they talked a little bit about having the abatement contractors bid on the demo and the earthwork and keeping, product on site. We just appreciate that perspective. When the drawings come from EUA, we do appreciate the dialogue with Vogel for what is the maybe most cost-effective way to get this out on the market. We think that definitely leads to opportunities for savings, and just appreciate this is a good example of how we've been trying to work through these type of things on this project. So thanks for these different options and kind of looking at this through different lenses. And
One other thing I will note too, so there will be work on South Street happening at the same time, and that's a separate contract direct to the village. And I think that gets awarded sometime this month at a village meeting, but if you do see a different company down there doing work and what you've approved, it's because the village has a separate contractor that'll be doing that process.
So they redoing the street or
They're
something?
gonna redo the utilities this summer, Jack. And then next summer, they're gonna actually redo the pavement for, I think, 3 or 4 blocks along South Street.
So what does that do? Coordinating?
We've coordinated with them in terms of access to the site. They've been good to work with in terms of that. And how we're gonna be able to tie into the utilities also. That should, it's gonna be a lot of work happening there, but we feel like we have a good plan for that.
That's been going for several months, so I think it's going well.
And that'll start after school's out.
so at this point, Katie, we would request consideration for moving these on to the regular March board meeting, or we'd be happy to answer any board members' questions on either of the 2 scopes of bids that were shared.
Are we pushing all bids to the board, or are we saying like one or the other?
Our request would be a recommendation from this committee indicating which vendor you're recommending for approval. So thanks for asking that. So as an example, with the demolition, the low bidder on that was Robinson Brothers. So typically we would request the committee then recommend to the board approval of the Robinson Brothers proposal that was presented.
Can we take one at a time?
Sure.
Did I miss this? Why is there such a big difference between Robinson and Belt?
Would you mind opening up?
The high and the low bid there, it just seems so. Is somebody not gonna take the concrete away, or?
No, that was incorporated into all of these,
Oh.
Judy, and honestly, Robinson, they're based in Waunakee too, so they came at this really aggressive.
Yeah,
And, we've scoped all of these and we're comfortable with that. We're not alarmed. That's low to high. If you look, the second bidder is really pretty close to Robinson. And then there's kind of a gap when you get up to the next 3, but we're confident in scope, and I feel it's really aggressive because they don't do a lot of work in Waunakee. They're usually around the state, so I think they want to.
right.
And the fact they're there doing the abatement as well. Brought some kind of.
Well, I appreciate going low bid, but I always wonder, why are they so much lower? What are we gonna miss when we go that way? Nothing.
They're gonna remove the entire building. Away the buffalo.
What else can you ask?
What else can you ask for?
They gotta wait till the curtain climbers are out.
Motion to approve or move forward with Robinson Brothers for the demolition scope.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And to the earthwork, motion to move forward with Greasy.
Second. So moved.
So,
All in favor? Aye.
The only other thing I'm gonna add too is once we get beyond Monday's meeting. And it's a formal approval, then we're gonna sit down with the earthwork, the demolition, abatement, and the district and us and figure out the exact timing of when we can start abating it. Because those are all really tied to other schedule lines.
Doesn't change the price.
No. It actually, if we move it back, it could save a little bit of money on the abatement. But we just want to make sure we have the appropriate timing. John and his staff have time to get stuff out, and his staff can get stuff done.
Okay, so moving on to the high school, we have some capital maintenance bids to review.
Yeah, we've got a presentation that we're gonna share with the committee and Jay is gonna work through the majority of that with the Vogel team. I just want to introduce it. Before I turn it over to Jay or Rebecca, if you would go to that first slide for a minute. So Jay often includes this first slide in his presentations to this committee and ultimately the board. Was really as a reminder of the total scope of the November 22 referendum. And what I just want to reinforce for everyone is we're going to be talking about in this presentation two sections of the November 22 referendum. The far right is maintenance and the column to the left of the high school TLC district. So we're going to be covering the high school, but from the perspective of two things: the targeted work that was approved in the referendum, and then capital maintenance work that we're looking to do in the building. The next agenda item is completely connected to this agenda item, which is a district-wide capital maintenance tracking document where we have to keep track of all of the capital maintenance work occurring in the high school and all of the district buildings to keep the total in mind. And so we'll be able to paint the complete picture for you with both this presentation and then the agenda item on district-wide capital maintenance. So just know that we're talking about two buckets of money in this presentation. And we're going to come back to continue the discussion on capital maintenance once this is done. Okay.
Sounds good. So again, some of this is carrying on from last month's meeting, where we had talked a little bit about budget and what we've got targeted for this summer for work. And now where we sit today, we've actually got our numbers for all these scopes. So we're sitting on numbers that would be final. So right now, the 2024 work to happen in high school is a total of 3.3 million. And that includes the old auditorium upgrades, the welding area modifications, the shop and lab modifications, along with LMTC furniture. And then as Steve alluded to, we also had a maintenance list that totaled just over $5.2 million worth of work. So what we've done over the last month, besides getting hard numbers for that, we've met with John and Scott and identified what items from that list is the district just going to handle directly, and then what items is Vogel Brothers going to manage as part of the other work within the high school. And again, you know, we looked at the economy of scale. If there's scopes where subs are going to be performing on those top 4 areas, it makes sense to pull it in. If there's items where it's just one sub or one supplier, one vendor that the district already has a relationship with, they can manage that work directly, and that's how we divided that out.
When you look at the high school roofing, is what part of the RE or that?
So right now that has about 80,000 square feet. Right there, we've identified about 80,000 square feet, which was mainly ballasted area, Jack. There's also some rubber area that's about 20 years old, Scott, I think. So right now that's a bucket of money that can handle all the ballasted, or we could shift some of that to handle some of the rubber, if that's maybe a little older than some of the ballasted.
Is the ballast the older?
Not in every scenario, it's not. Like at the gym I cast, the gym is what happened.
The gym is, it's 2011. Then.
And another reason we've separated that one is there isn't necessarily a need for that to happen this summer. And as we get to the next document, Steve alluded to it, budget dollars, we're trying to thread the needle of what we can all do this summer and maybe some stuff we want to hold off to the side until there's additional contingency dollars that can be used. So, and then there's also a couple additional scope items we were able to pull into the project, the tech center, which the floor plan was reviewed for the facility committee last meeting, and then also fire protection with the tech ed area, which is about $150,000 scope. So if you add the 2024 work plus the Boulder Brother direct items, plus additional scope, it totals to $6,818,800 as our targeted budget. And based on the final numbers that we received here over the last couple of weeks, we're trending in a positive direction. We're just a little under $100,000 lower than that target at $6,726,700. And that does include a contingency of $280,000 plus the soft cost, which is furniture, fixtures, equipment, and design fees as well. So you can see there the total construction is actually $5,660,000. The list of items below, I'm not going to get into too much detail on. If you've got questions on, you can by all means ask. But those are items we've identified that we want to do a little further investigation with the district in terms of what scope we really want to accomplish there. So you'll see there's some flooring areas as well, the roofing that we just mentioned. There's some storage cabinets that we maybe would do on the FF&E side versus built-in construction. And then the AV and stage lighting areas of the small auditorium, we're still finalizing scope there. But the last piece I want to put out in front of the committee, because I think it ties into the maintenance and overall strategy of the district. So right now, the pool parking lot, so that's a parking lot between the pool and the middle school. We've included $50,000 to do patching for areas where that's in bad shape. We've also looked at two other options there. One is if you repave that whole area, and then the second is to redo that whole area. Now, the redo is really to address some of the drainage challenges that are causing the deterioration of that paving. The repave would just repave it, but it's not going to necessarily last as long as a parking lot would because you're not addressing the drainage issues that are causing that deterioration.
What do you estimate, if you correctly, drainage issues?
250. That's an additional
Lifetime.
Whole lifetime. That parking lot's probably gonna last. I mean, you have to seal and fill cracks over the course of pavement, but it's probably 15 years.
I think one of the questions we have, Jack, is what are we doing with the middle school, that campus piece?
Yeah.
And that's probably our worst parking lot when you kind of walk through there, see where water ponds and such, so. And that's kind of the conversation that Jay's been leaving with us is how much do you want to put and invest in that? I think that's why we started with the 50 grand. Do you patch it to get us through the next year or so, next couple of years, then figure out what that larger scope looks like?
So let's say if we use the old one, so come up with a great company. If you spend 250, you're looking at 15 years. If you spend 50 or 100, was that 5 to 10?
I would guess your 100 would get you 5 to 10. Your 50 could get you patched. You could probably patch it twice over the next couple of years, so that 50 would get you 5-ish, I would guess. We just felt as though it'd probably be good if we didn't want to throw, because you'd be at 250 plus the 50 return, so it'd be about 300 total investment to meet the drainage.
Understood.
Yep. So this next list is the subcontract bid awards that we're recommending. You'll see some of these have 2 listed. We're still working through the process of scoping all of these areas. And our plan is by the board meeting on Monday, we would have this narrowed down to 1, but we want to at least get this in front of this group now to let you know some of those areas that there is 2 and the 2 vendors that we're still scoping. And then this is just a slide to remind you that there is going to be work in this building this summer as well, plus the parking lot area. Right now, that work is trailing a little bit behind the high school work, so we plan to present final bids at the April or May facility committee school board meetings. Again, plan to have that work completed in the summer as well.
I guess the office modifications, if you look at the middle school, You know, we don't have a good plan on what we're gonna do with that. You know, I guess, just kind of a visionary pie in the sky, we move the administration offices in there. You know, if you spend the 615 this year,
A lot of that, Jack, is parking lot.
Okay.
Say probably 75% of that is gonna be outside here.
Yeah, it's the main parking lot, then expanding it around the side there so we can have more parking. And also get some of the other John's vehicles, et cetera, off that area.
I would just suggest that, instead of, putting it into, this summer, you know, put it into, next summer as far as the office modification, because that gives you a better picture on what you're gonna do with the middle school. You know, develop the overall plan. It might make a little bit more sense. I don't know what the other thoughts are.
I think one of the thoughts we had on that, Jack, is there is kind of a larger start of a master plan for this building. So this is a very modified version of it. It's also looking at some of the programs that we currently house that are partners with us, the new teacher project, the Waunakee Cares Coalition that work very closely with us, but we help to house them in their programs. They're all at Heritage, which will go away this summer. So part of what we want to look at is how do we get some of our staff into regular offices? And then how do we also help support some of the groups that we work very closely with so that there is a home for them over the next few years as we go through construction. I mean, Jared's office right now is in the cubicle back here. I mean, he works with a lot of special ed pieces. I don't have a space for him. So I think what you're looking at for the office modifications, it's really some pretty basic additions of offices, similar like we did for Annie and Brian this past summer. It's adding some additional areas of those. John's assistant is kind of in a quasi entryway to the building. I feel like that needs to be improved. So I guess my advocacy would be for consideration to do some of this summer. One for the parking lot, but two just for the functionality of this building. But there is a master plan for this building, which I think then leads well into, is this the right building for us? Or is this something that you do in the future? And that could be part of either the middle school or the high school campus planning. That's kind of a discussion, but I think that the need for the next several years is here to address some of the office pieces, and certainly our parking lot is in pretty good shape.
Can we see that master plan? You know, just give us an idea of what you're.
You bet.
So as far as requests from this committee, we're going to talk about the capital maintenance list and portion of this in just a moment. But if you want to go back to Rebecca, as far as a request, if you can keep going back. A request for consideration for the board next Monday night would be the final construction amount of $6.7 million, which is the Vogel portion of the work at the high school. And like Jay mentioned, John and Scott and our team spent time going through making sure that we were aligning the work in the right place, meaning if it's work that the district should take on, we're going to be showing you that next. If it's work that makes the most sense for Vogel to take on because of efficiencies of scale and bidding documents, it's included in the 6.7 million. So we are going to be requesting an action item next Monday night for an approval at the $6.7 million. You could call it a guaranteed maximum price, similar approach to what we've done with the new schools where there is a maximum dollar amount. We would track the contingency just like we have on the other projects. In the end, it's just a mini version of what we've been showing you at Heritage and we'll be showing you at the new school. So we would request consideration of moving this forward. Now, as Jay mentioned, the subcontractors, some of them are still being worked out, but you could recommend consideration of the high school work in the summer of 2024 at an amount of $6,726,700. And then we would bring back additional information next Monday night as the subcontractor list is finalized. If there's any questions, certainly the mobile team would be happy to answer them.
So just a point of clarification, the roof is not included in this 6.7 million?
That's correct.
And then the flooring is included, and then we're still trying to decide what direction we're gonna move for the parking lot.
We've included 50,000,
50,000 as a, okay,
yeah, to do that short-term patch versus long.
When you look at the stage lighting, you're looking at LED.
Yeah.
So it was
second,
presented.
Second, yeah, second.
all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to flooring at the high school.
Gotta take it back. So
It's not on this presentation.
Yeah.
It's want to go back.
what?
So we had this as a second agenda item separate from the presentation because we were going to provide an update to you on the approval that we asked the board to make last month at the regular board meeting. We did request the board approve an amount not to exceed $1 million with Randy's approval for the budget. However, work has continued on this topic since the last meeting, so we wanted to share an update with you. Jay, if you want to just kind of share what's been going on since the last board meeting and why this is back as an item.
Yeah, so at the last board meeting, we had it on there due to long lead times for the material we were initially going to go with because it was 18 weeks to get that material. But from that, since that board meeting, we met both internally at Old Brothers and with the EUA on the design side. And then also with the administration, we explored a couple other options in terms of rubber flooring options. And ultimately, we're able to identify a material that is local or available stateside and not across the pond. Which comes with a lot better lead time. So we're looking at like an 8 to 10 and having 18-week lead time. And so in doing so, we had listed on that slide in terms of the flooring, we're recommending go with Surgeniums for the flooring. But we're able to find that local product and the color selection and the product that meets the expectations of districts. So we didn't need to buy that at this possible.
So right now, there's a motion that the board has approved that would allow Jay to send that to Randy because the motion was for Randy to be able to approve up to $1 million. So the question is, because we've switched products, would this committee like to see that as a new action item at the March board meeting or just proceed as already has been approved by the board?
I guess the question would be, what's the price differential between the 8 weeks and the 8 weeks?
So right now, we're still vetting the final product. There's 2 different products we're down to, but both are available locally, Jack. So right now we're carrying what's 700, around 700 for the base work, and then another $230,000 of allowance for prep and moisture mitigation that's associated with that flooring work. So we're probably on that like 30,000, Jack, right now in terms of what that will be amount is.
Question is how much is the US product cheaper than or in the same range?
It's a little bit more cost effective, but it requires
Cost
additional
effective.
floor prep.
Okay.
Than
And the
what
product is cheaper, but you need more flow.
Yeah.
But they're both in the same range. About
Yeah.
10%.
What's that? Both the bids or the?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're within
I
like,
think when we saw it at our last meeting, the end cost there wasn't a great differential, but it was kind of flipped as far as product versus prep. Is that accurate description? So the end cost is
Just like a wash.
similar.
Okay.
So would this committee recommend just continuing with the motion that the board already approved, which is You would get the final information, Randy, or would you prefer to actually bring a bid to the next? Continue.
Continue, I don't think we need to bring it up.
We will proceed then. Okay, so now we're moving on to the capital projects list. So I'm gonna ask Scott to come up and join us at the table as well. He can help answer any questions that you might have. While Scott's coming up, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about kind of the big picture on this issue again. Rebecca, would you mind bringing up the tracking documents? And then if you could blow it up and just focus on the very top part of it for a moment. Thank you. So for the big picture for just a minute on this topic, we referenced earlier in Jay's presentation, the $6.3 million that was approved in the referendum. As we have gone through the project to date, we have continued updating the funds available for maintenance as we move throughout the project. An example of that is at Heritage, when we finalized the budget for the new school, we were able to pull $1.1 million out of that project to invest instead in district-wide maintenance. That's that 1.1 million. And the most significant number is really the interest allocation. So we've talked about this before at the board level about the success that we've had with our financial plan for the referendum. The timing of when the board approved the $99 million borrowing and the interest earnings that we've had year to date. And the fact that there are IRS spend down requirements connected to those funds. The direction we received from both the facility committee and the budget committee was to proceed and move forward with the intent of not rebating those funds back to the IRS. And in order to not rebate those interest earnings, we have to meet the spend down requirements. We've been spending a lot of time on that. As an example, we met at the school board convention, Vogel team, our financial advisor, Allie, myself, we've just been continuing to dial this in. So you will see a relatively large request this month. The intent behind it is to have this work completed in the summer of 24 with the goal of meeting the August 1st, 24 spend down requirement from the IRS in order to be able to keep all of our interest earnings here in Waunakee and apply them towards projects. So the pace at which you're seeing projects is certainly at a faster pace than we typically prefer. But we are doing it with the overall intent of maximizing interest earnings, not having to rebate any of the interest earnings back to the IRS, and invest these funds into district-wide maintenance. And as we know on the topic of district-wide maintenance, Jack has brought this up several times in different committee work. We have a list that's over $20 million. So we have a very extensive and deep, long-term capital maintenance list across the district that covers all of the roofs, all of the flooring, all of the lighting, all of the parking lots. And we've looked at that for a number of years. But when we got to the process of finalizing the November 22 referendum and the way the project had changed to include 2 new schools, we pared that list down to $6.3 million. So now with allocating the interest earnings and the savings at Heritage, we're able to go much further down the list. And so we are investing these dollars in projects that will be on the list, have been on the list, and as we continue to move these projects forward. The focus of this list today is the high school. So what we have decided to do, because of the large volume of work that's already occurring at the high school, is we have focused our efforts accordingly. We believe it makes the most sense to pair up our work, meaning the work the district team is managing, with the Vogel work and focus our efforts on the high school. While we certainly did meet with all of the building principals, John Scott and I did, we have very good insight on what it is that they would like to see accomplished in their school. We brought forward many of their top requests last month that you looked at. We are prioritizing the high school. A good example of that, which would be on this proposed project list, is, Rebecca, if you could scroll down a little bit, and then the 1.4 million. So the 1.4 million is LED lighting replacement throughout the school. So we have showed you quotes in the past for the middle school, Prairie, Arboretum, and the high school. Right now, we're focusing on the high school. So we want to make sure that both our internal capacity and our contractor capacity would allow for the successful completion of the high school work before we really feel comfortable proposing anything else. So another example of that is clock, bell, and PA replacement. You see that number is 826,000. Last month, we showed you that number for the existing middle school, Arboretum, and the high school. This month, you're only seeing the number for the high school. Now, that doesn't mean that the system at Arboretum doesn't need to be replaced. It means that we're focusing our efforts right now on the high school. So we have prepared an entire list for you. I want you to, first of all, look at that top number, items from maintenance list in Vogel Brothers scope of work. So in the previous presentation that Jay provided to you, I mentioned that a portion of that work was coming out of the capital maintenance piece of the referendum. So we can't lose track of that. So therefore, we're putting that right on the top of the list for March, that 3.5 million. Then as we go down from there, we are focusing the large dollar amount investments in the high school. There's other work on the list, but very minimal. You can see the column that describes the school. The majority of the requests this month are connected to the high school. The themes that you would see are complete new lighting throughout, complete new clock, bell, and PA system throughout. The field house is going to get a bit of a facelift. You'd see bleacher work, you see painting, the curtain wall, the basketball area. There's some work going on in the field house, but basically the bottom line is this is a high school heavy look at what we're trying to do. Randy's brought some perspective on like audio visual, you know, and we don't want to have the high school having the worst AV systems in the district, which they're going to if we don't put these things on the list. So like the cave area, the commons, the field house for graduation. So Rick Franz has been working on that to make sure that we have a modern system in place in the high school. So I will say the bottom line before turning it over to questions or anything any of this group wants to add is we have shifted from what you saw last month, which was proposals for a lot of schools, to a high school focus today.
If I can just add something, Jay, I apologize, I didn't ask you this before the meeting, but I know we're doing a lot of work in with the lights and then all of the, Mark Hetzel on our board asked me the other week about ceiling tiles and how that can, of course, I told him I thought a lot of that work corresponded as we were up in those corridors. Can you speak to that for just a second?
Yeah, so we're replacing about 45,000 square feet of ceiling tile in the corridors. There's some of those areas that you've already converted to LED lights. So those areas, obviously those lights stay, but areas which aren't would be included in this light.
Thank you. I thought that was the answer.
And it's similar though with your clock, bell, and PAs. There's a lot of those devices in that ceiling that from an economy of scale makes sense to use in that way.
We're gonna spend 1.4 million on LED lights. Where does that take us in replacing LED lights? Are we 50%? Are we 80%? You know, we've been talking about this for 5 years.
Yep.
And spending a lot of money, so.
Yep, absolutely. So that's a great question. So we had this as a sub-agenda item last month, and it is again this month. We have proposals for, Arboretum, Prairie, and the existing middle school for classroom LED replacement. We talked last month that John put together a pilot program at Prairie where teachers have the ability and administrators have the ability to see two different types of LED lights. We received feedback from everyone on to what the preference was. The preference was the design that's going into our new schools. So there were two different times. We had pictures in the packet, but the bottom line is the feedback we received is that the preference was for what we're doing in our new schools. Scott then went back and got new quotes from Westfall to reflect that feedback that we received. That's what we've included here. Beyond the high school, Jack, we would still have building-wide LED lighting upgrades needed at Prairie and Arboretum, and then ultimately a decision as to what would happen with the middle school. And while you asked that, we took the feedback from last month's facility committee meeting and removed all of the large investments from the existing middle school building. So you saw LED lighting last month at the middle school. You saw clock bell and PA at the middle school. We talked about solar because there's a newer roof at the middle school. All of that has been removed based on that feedback. But I would say, Jack, after the LED lighting approval at the high school, off the top of my head, I'd probably put us in the 60% range because we still have some schools that won't be done. Our biggest school will be done. Our newer schools will be done. But we would definitely have to decide what to do with Prairie, Arboretum, and the existing middle school.
This 1.4 million, we're done.
With high school.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. The other thing, you look at filtration equipment, you got two boiler filtration equipment on here. One right there and one lower. One of the things we talked about through COVID was this filtration system that takes germs out of the air. Is that what this is, or is this just standard filters?
Your closed loop water system, not the boiler system. So it's just for closed loop.
And that's not the
That's the air.
ionization.
Yes.
There is one number on here that has been updated. That would be what Micah came in here last time for, was the varsity baseball shed and press box. It's showing $10,000 there. That should be 20.
Yeah, we've got a couple sub items that I just want to touch a little bit more on as well to kind of just make sure you've got the complete picture of them. I'll just start with the LED lighting. So the board knows that Ally and I have been working with a specific law firm out of Madison that specializes in energy efficiency. We're working with them on two different areas. One is to participate in a federal program called Direct Pay for the Solar, where we're expecting to receive up to 30% back of the investment that we're making in solar. The second one, which is more complicated, is a tax credit program for energy efficiency for things like building lighting upgrades. Ally and I have been working with Westfall, the subcontractor, and our attorney on this. And the initial response that we received from taking a deep dive into this is that the high school would be eligible for that federal tax credit program. Ally and I are still exploring that, but we just want to make sure you know that in parallel to this discussion, we are working on that. The goal is to maximize any incentive programs that exist out there, whether it's federal incentive programs or state ones, like Focus on Energy, to maximize that return to our district for those investments. That was one of the items that we had listed separately. Scott just mentioned the varsity baseball field. So as a committee last month, Randy brought up a request to evaluate the structural integrity of the press box area. And secondly, to look at higher quality storage options. The committee did go along with that recommendation from Randy. Scott has been working on that since then. Worked with the Vogel team on the structural integrity of the building. We do have the ability to cut in a concession stand space there, which is part of that proposal. The other part is Scott has been working with Vogel on ideas for better storage options. So that's why that number at $20,000 would address the issue that was brought up. I want to touch on Jack's point from last month about a bigger picture, longer term plan for the high school athletic fields. We have not forgotten about that. And tomorrow night is the special board meeting really focusing on long-term planning. There is an agenda item on tomorrow night's agenda where the district administration has requested communication from both Epstein, Ewan, and Vogel on the topic of long-term planning in the high school campus. You will see that in the agenda for tomorrow night. Epstein, Ewan included a long-range master plan for the high school athletic fields in that communication. So you will see that tomorrow night. We'll jump back to that topic at the special board meeting. We know that was an interest of this committee and the board. So you'll see that tomorrow. Our intention for 2024 is that fundamentally this would wrap up our request for capital maintenance for what we are attempting to do in the summer of 24. Ally and I have worked with Jay many times on the spend down requirements for the IRS. We have a high degree of confidence that with all of these requests that you have in front of you, the high school work you have in front of you, and what we're doing at the middle school and Heritage, our projections indicate we will meet the IRS spend down requirements. We would not have brought such an extensive list if we had a different path to get to that August 1st requirement. But we want to keep all of those interest earnings ourselves, which is why we are putting a larger than typical list in front of you for consideration.
So if we approve this list, then we approve the varsity baseball shed and press box moving forward.
That's what's on here, yes, Jeff. If you approve the whole list, or if there's something on here that you just don't feel comfortable doing, you have the ability to pull it out. We're just presenting it as a whole. But that's the intent, was that this kind of was the encompassment of exactly what Steve said. It was the projects that I identified as being higher need, and also being able to fit in the scope of the work that fits this summer.
Understand. I guess, as I've mentioned, I'd like to see a master plan on the athletic fields. And this may be part of that master plan. So I guess I'd like to at least, pull the varsity baseball and press box work off of this list and put it in the master plan.
Would you then be looking for another way to spend some of that money to reach what you're?
I'm sure you can find other ways to spend.
Thankfully, we're not quite down to being that close. But thank you for asking. I mean, we would be fine if there are, smaller projects on this list that there was a request to further study. Even if there were things that you wanted to do differently, like as an example, if this committee preferred to do LED lighting at Prairie instead of the high school, we have the ability to look at different ways to attack this, but the bottom line is we have a specific dollar amount we need to get to. We're over that. We feel like we can comfortably meet the August 1st number. But if there were items from this list that you felt that you wanted to reevaluate, we can adjust accordingly. Some of these things you're seeing for the first time, like as an example, if I could call your attention to the middle of the list, you see video cameras at the high school. Why we have shifted at the high school off of the roof, which we believe does need to be replaced, but not now, into operational needs of the building. The security system at the high school is analog based in a lot of different cameras. It's older. It's when security cameras were first being added. We will have nicer security camera systems in elementary buildings than we do at our high school. Same with clock bell and PA. Same with, the audio visual. We've changed our focus a bit for this list into the actual operation of the school. So that next year, some of these, components would significantly improve the way that the high school administration operates on a daily basis. We thought that was more important than the roof at this point.
And I certainly appreciate that. A question that just comes to mind is, as we're working on our facility, long-term facilities plan and creating a campus-like structure at the high school, when we're looking at lighting and flooring and big ticket items, do we anticipate that those items, those things will need to be adjusted when we combine the middle school with the high school?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I mean, basically, Katie's referencing, the items on this list, are they good long-term investments, no matter how a master plan might shake itself out? We feel that they are, and we feel that the feedback we received from the facility committee last month to pull out of the middle school because of these investments, because the middle school is the space where the classrooms aren't appropriately sized for high school students. Significant work would likely need to occur there. But when we get done with like the 1,400 and 1,500 hallways, they're going to look great, and their high school size classrooms. We don't see a scenario where those hallways would be turned into something else.
Okay,
other
I
than
just like to
high
ask
school
that.
class.
And if I could just add to that, I mean, I think that was a big piece that we walked through in our rationale that's putting this list together was, how is it gonna fit in the bigger picture? And is there gonna be congruence with what happens in the future regardless of the direction? I think with regards to Jack, your question with regards to the varsity baseball shed and press box, the reason we put it on here, we do believe it'll be part of the master plan. We also believe that it was a conversation that we started before we went down the road of really wanting to put that full vision together. And I do see it as one of the things that we have as a limiting factor in all of our activities right now. And you'll see that as we go through that process of storage. And so that was the reason we added it here. I didn't like the original plan that was brought forward last month. I just didn't think it fit in with our really what we wanted long term. I do think that this does.
So what's the shed? Is this a Nards?
It's called a Martin shed, but I did share a picture with Steve. It is a vinyl sided shed. It's got a metal roof. It's well built. Al from Vogel, he's the one that put me in touch with these people. He really believes.
It puts it on a concrete slab.
You can put it on you can just put it on the ground, but if you wanted to put it on a concrete slab, that would be even nicer.
Well, I think you need to put it. It's that you can use it storage.
The other issue with this is with this shed, this building, you do not have to have a permit. Nothing has to be drawn up for building because you can move it around wherever you want.
That was the reason we added it there, Jack. I mean, we really understand the big picture with the long range plan piece. But I know we have a general across the district. That was a piece when Steve and I met with Nick Conrad just about our budget updates with regards to what some of the requests are coming forward, and then also foreshadowed with him to be ready for the conversation that will be forthcoming with regards to the master planning piece. I mean, his comment to us was, well, storage will be at a high level on that piece. So that was why we added it here. If there's not comfort until we get there, we understand that, but that was the rationale for why we added it there, was we felt that it was probably gonna be there anyway. And that this was something that has an immediate impact. And it was a conversation we started with some of the baseball folks prior to us kind of getting into the master planning piece, and that coming to the board tomorrow.
They were talking about fundraising as well.
I think they do have some fundraising efforts going as far as what they're targeted for. And that wasn't what we were looking at with this piece. This was this piece we added to our facility maintenance aspect.
And just as a final comment about like what would be next, because some of the larger items that we have not put on the list for right now are the LED lighting at Arboretum and Prairie, clock, bell, and PA system for sure at Arboretum, holding off on the middle school. We believe this, as we move forward past the approval or consideration of these projects, the heritage element, there's some key dates in the next 4 to 5 months. The middle school bidding process will be coming forward to you yet this spring. So getting through that major milestone as far as what is the guaranteed maximum price on the middle school and how does that align to the budget? What is the contingency for the middle school and what does that look like? Secondly, the completion of Heritage Elementary School project. So as that project wraps up, you have seen the tracker that we're providing with you every month. You see that that project is going very well. Our intentions would be to reallocate those funds to the capital maintenance list. On top of that, we've only shared with you the interest earnings from the $99 million portion of the borrowing. The board also borrowed $10 million initially. That has a different set of rules. That's been earning interest. And then ultimately, we're working with the budget committee on executing the remaining portion of the referendum plan. Those funds will earn interest. And then ultimately, in the end, if the middle school project goes well, we would hope that there could be some contingency dollars to be freed up. So this isn't the end of a discussion on capital maintenance. We view this as the 2024 discussion on capital maintenance, with hopes that we can come back and expand the funds available through those 3 major areas: middle school, heritage, and additional interest earnings. There may be some smaller things here or there that we discover over the next couple of months that we would want to get in front of you. But we will not be bringing back in the next couple of months like Prairie LED lighting or Prairie flooring or Arboretum clock, bell, and PA system. Those are too large of projects and we need to see the funds available before we do that. So we've got plenty of folks here who can answer any questions about any of the items on the list. Randy and I can answer any questions about the big picture. Ultimately, we're requesting consideration of the board next Monday night on whatever direction this committee recommends.
Just looking at the list, there are 4 other things that are with the sports field and stuff, and I just think we should take what you've given us and not pick it apart, and wait for something different. Now, I know you're looking at a long-range plan, Jack, but then why don't you question the press box and stuff like that?
And just to answer that, Judy, I think some of those things were items that we also identified as needing some maintenance too. Those are maintenance, I mean, they weren't kind of additions to, they were kind of maintenance items that we felt that just needed from a perspective of upkeep, but that's why those are added there. It's a little bit different.
I just have a little trouble sitting here as a
I make the motion to
Picking it.
approve as presented.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so
Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind going back off the list, get a chance. So the sub items underneath this, we talked about LED lighting. You want to keep going. We talked about clock, bell, and PA, focus on the high school. We talked about the update on the baseball field. So that really concludes what we were hoping to accomplish this morning. If any committee members have anything else that you would like to bring up. Oh, if you wanted to see the shed, Rebecca, you could tell, oh, you did, okay.
We have a choice of colors.
Yes, you do.
I really appreciate all the work that you've done to ensure that we are doing the right thing with the funds that we have. And I think that, just reiterate what Jack has mentioned too, that once we have an overall plan for our facilities, our athletic facilities, it'll be so much easier to be making these decisions moving
Well, I think
forward.
the challenge is, every 3 months we get another.
Right,
We need
request.
this. We
and
need
you want to
this.
be consistent and, and
We've
so-
gone through a marketing and a branding, we're putting a shed, which is gonna look good. But, does that blend in with, everything else that, it's just.
I'm very much looking forward to establishing that
Yeah.
plan.
That's-
That'll help our process.
And
moving forward.
Steve and I don't disagree with
Yeah.
that, Katie and Jack. That's a piece. I think part of it that we looked at was, where does it fit? Where did the conversation start? Where are we at with the master plan?
Mhm.
And Steve and I both know we get requests that continue, as you're well aware.
Mhm.
And this is kind of the piece that, from our perspective, this is kind of the end. As far as until that plan is placed, that you can then put some thoughts on it and how we're gonna do that. Please.
Well, I'm happy to hear that tomorrow we're going to be starting that process there because it's been a long time coming. And I think, we just need to get this moving forward.
Just helps maintain consistency too, as requests come in from all over.
What we'll talk about tomorrow night, just as a foreshadow for, is we'll present to you what we'd like to do. We'll actually have the action item on Monday's board.
Great.
And I think the other thing too is how do we fund this, as our budgets continue to get tighter, what is our main purpose for having a district? It's educating kids. And, obviously sports are important and I see them as a well-rounded student, you need these different activities. But, as we continue to take money away from and put them into these other activities. We get requests, from how do we educate our kids and so forth.
I'm looking forward to the presentation from Warren Media. They're.
Yeah.
Not Warrior Media, but
Yeah,
the
it's a market.
youth apprenticeship
Right.
marketing students that are gonna come through, because I think they're gonna have a lot of really good ideas. And I would submit that, I believe that there is a ton of education that happens in all these extracurricular activities, sports and arts and music. And I know you, yeah, but
My
I think
kids
it's important
were
to invest.
involved in art.
Mhm.
I went through the art show last night and I thought it was a great show. My kids were in music, my kids were in sports. I believe in them as a well-rounded
Yes.
student. You need these different activities. But, when you start looking at these facilities, they're costing a lot of money. And, when we were kids, we went down to the park and were able to play on, the park baseball field. And, as we improve our facilities, which I think we have to, we need to figure out how do we balance that with our primary purpose of making sure that our kids can read, write, and subtract.
Very important.
So that's where I'm coming from. Anyways, enough to sort of
Sorry.
We've got a lot to look forward to coming in the next month with information on the new middle school and stuff, so. I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye.